Hello everybody. Today MS292 International Business Online Lecture Series 2. Okay. Last lecture we discussed at the last sessions about the Porter's diamond structure. Okay. And today, starting from the evaluating Porter's theory, okay. So listen carefully. This Porter's theory is a very much significant meanings. Porter argues all four conditions. You can review after this lecture, okay. Four conditions are required to boost competitive performance. Yes, that is true. As a theory, it is good. And Porter also contends that government can influence each of the four components. Do you remember four components? Factor endowments, demand conditions, and corporate structure. And also there are some industry structures also. Subsidiaries, suppliers, all these things. Porter contends the government can influence each of the four components of diamond, either positively or negatively. This means, positively means, government sometimes take an action to protect the producers. And that protectionism sometimes damage the consumers' benefits. You know that government takes a strong protective actions or restrictions for import. Then consumers cannot buy good and cheap high quality goods because of this protection. So therefore, positively or negatively, to the depending on the sector of the countries. If Porter is correct, okay, this model can be used to predict of international trade in the real world. Well, there are lots of meanings, implications, but Porter's theory, be careful, has not been subjected to detailed empirical testing. Porter's theory is a conceptual theory. At this moment, this Porter's diamond has not been subjected to detailed empirical testing. That is the future work. Lots of implications. In future has to be tested in the empirical scenes. Okay. So that is the meaning of the Porter's theory of the diamond. Now, we have to see some different aspects. Now we'll see the implications for managers. There are lots of international business scenes we have to consider. Three main implications for international businesses discussed in this chapter. Okay, one is a location, the other one is a first mover advantages, and government policy. These three areas are there are lots of implications for international business managers. Okay, first we'll see one by one. Location. Productive activities have to be dispersed according to the theory of international trade, which means where is the best locations? See, company has a lots of activities. R&D activity, manufacturing, production, and marketing, etc. For example, R&D, which is the most suitable location for the company? Maybe your company headquarters locates Tokyo, London, or New York, or maybe for the tax reasons, New Hebrides, Jersey Islands. Well, headquarters locates somewhere else, and R&D, which is the most proper place, R&D. You need lots of professional engineers, scientists, experts. So therefore, in your industry, what is the best place for R&D? Generally speaking, for example, IT industry, the American companies or Japanese companies may prefer to R&D location will be either America, Japan, or somewhere in Europe. Manufacturing, for example, is, well, after you develop the products, manufacturing is the parts manufacturer assembling, okay, parts manufacturing maybe in somewhere in China or Vietnam. These days maybe Myanmar may be suitable, and assembling, for example, is maybe Thailand may be suitable. Okay, so manufacturing is a parts supply and also for assemblings, which is the location, best place. Maybe labor cost is much cheaper, then that area assembling is most suitable. And productions, manufacturing and production is the same things. And the marketing is also the best place is somewhere in for example Singapore. Most people like these days marketing headquarters, or sometimes Bangkok for the Southeast Asia, or in Middle East maybe for example the Dubai is maybe the best suited for marketing. Okay, and Europe maybe say Rotterdam or Paris or London. Okay, and also the financing functions is maybe about London or New York must be the best place. So you have to consider what is the best locations, okay, considering the comparative advantage and the factor endowments and the like. Okay, so this is things for the implications for the managers. And also you have to consider the new trade theory argues that fast mover firms with regard to production of a particular new product subsequently dominates global trade in that product. Once you establish your system or marketing or manufacturing or R&D, you will enjoy fast mover advantages. Okay, this is the new trade theories. This is number 2 points, implication for managers. And then the government policy. This is rather complicated. I will explain one by one today's lecture. Okay. Because of international traders' pivotal role in their businesses, which can exert strong influence on government trade policy, lobbying to promote free trade or trade restrictions. Well, Government and business relations these days are very much complicated. Some industries have a strong influence to the governments and they have a strong lobbying activities, and then they will try to uh, give certain influence to the governments to enact some laws which is beneficial for their industries. For example, US government's intention to place an import tariff on Japanese liquid crystal. Well, some of the American supplier of the liquid crystal screens, they pressed or give some pressure to the governments. Don't import Japanese high quality ones. Price is reasonable and quality is good. So therefore they put some import tariff against Japanese LCD. It was 1980s. IBM and Apple Computer Company protested strongly against this import tariff because IBM and Apple insisted that Japan was the lowest cost source of LCD screens, thus making them less competitive in the world market. If they put more tariff against Japanese LCD and they have to pay more price to buy Japanese LCD, and that makes their IBM and Apple's computer becomes more expensive. Okay, and then they lose competitive power. So therefore they are against to impose import tariff to the Japanese goods. Well, number two, the pressure to Japanese steel companies. Okay, the other things also happened. This was my personally experienced in the United States, even 1970s when I was studying in the United States. There are lots of anti-Japanese movements because of lots of Japanese steel were exported to the United States. So American steel manufacturer put a strong pressure to the American government, put more tariffs, duties against Japanese steels. But, well, the American automobile companies, GMs and Ford, they may suffer because they cannot buy the high quality and good price Japanese steel. Their cars manufacturing cost becomes expensive. You have to consider almost 70-80% of the car's cost is coming from the steel. Okay, so instead of against the duties, tariffs, American government made a pressure to the Japanese steel companies to accept the voluntary restrictions. Well, voluntary restrictions, that is a political pressure. Well, the other one, shielded from international competition by import barriers, the negative effects. The US machine tools industry. Again, they faced a strong competition from the Japan. And then American governments put the heavy duties, and what's happened is that, well, American tool manufacturing machine tool companies enjoyed this, and therefore they became a little bit lazy and lost incentive to increase its efficiency. Well, in this country, Pakistan, I heard from Japanese car manufacturing companies. Well, there are some local contents restrictions in these countries. Such and such percentage of the product components has to be locally manufactured. So therefore, Japanese car manufacturing company has to get certain parts or components of the cars they have to buy from local supplier, Pakistan made ones. Then they are protected. So they are enjoying almost monopoly markets. Well, we can supply to the Toyota, Honda, Nissan. Well, and then not exposed to the international competitions. So they are enjoying. They have a less incentive to improve their quality or international competitiveness. So this happens. So then the parts quality is difficult to reach the international quality wise. Okay, this is happening in this Pakistan, unfortunately. Okay. Now, the political economy, international trade. This one, today I will discuss part of them, and then later half I will discuss the next sessions. Political economy of the international trade. 7 main instruments: tariff, subsidies, import quotas, voluntary export restrictions, VER, local content requirements, administrative policies, anti-dumping duties. Alright, one by one we'll go. Tariff. Well, tax levied on exports or imports. Well, tax, it is normally levied on import, but sometimes in exports. Okay, for example, some of the good quality things government doesn't want to export, rather to be used in the locally, so they will discourage the exports. So they will sometimes levy the exports tax. The famous example is the United States in 19th century. The southern part of the United States is very famous for cotton production, and in the northern part of the United States, the industrialization started. They want to use their own cotton for their textile industry. So therefore, the northern part of the states insisted or discouraged to export the cottons produced in the southern part of the United States to UK or some other parts of in the world. So that is one of the reasons conflicts between North and South. So that's happened eventually to the civil wars, 1861 to 64. Okay. Tariffs is two kinds. One is a specific tariffs, is a fixed charge for each unit of a good. Okay. For example, say 1 unit of a good, how much charge? That is one kind. The ad valorem tariff is levied as a proportion of the value of a good. Okay, the value of a good, for example, import or export, normally for the price of FOB. FOB means is a export or import price formulas. The title of the positive titles is transferred to the buyers when the goods reaches on the board of ship. That is FOB, we call it. The other one is the X factory, at the price where the goods were going out from the factory. That is one. The other one is the CIF, cost insurance freight, which means the sellers will deliver the goods until the ports of the importers. So cost covers cost and insurance and freight charge. That is CIF price. So tariffs, ad valorem tariffs, is normally on the price of FOB, which is the price exporting port on the ship good arrived, that price. This is called ad valorem tariffs. And in the year of 2002, the US placed an ad valorem tariff of 8 to 30% on imports of foreign steel. Rather big tariffs because of they faced heavy pressure from the steel industry in the United States. 2003, WTO World Trade Organization declared that the tariffs violated WTO treaty, and the US removed them in December of that year. Okay, rather they pushed the voluntary export restraints, VER. Generally, tariffs are pro-producer, which means beneficiary to the producers. Anti-consumer. Consumer is suffering because they have to pay more price because of the heavy tax, and reduce the overall efficiency of the world economy. Rather protectionism. Okay. Now, the other things the government will do intervening to the international trade is a subsidy, is a government payment to a domestic producer. They have to encourage certain sectors of the industries. Well, Pakistani government wants to encourage textiles or cement industries, and then they will give certain subsidies for these industries. Well, subsidies in the form of simple cash grants or low interest loans, especially beneficial interest loans, low rate, or tax breaks, and government equity participation in domestic farms. Well, some of the companies in any countries, oil industries or steel industries or ship manufacturing industries, these ones are very much heavy investments. So government will assist by participating as a shareholder, which is government equity participations, partially owned by governments. Okay, these are subsidiaries. Subsidiaries help domestic producers, yes, competing against foreign imports. You can encourage the domestic products and gaining export markets. You can give up handsome subsidies, and then if your certain industries gets competitive power, then export markets in the world will be developed because of the developed industry in your country. Well, according to the WTO statistics, you will be surprised. All countries in the world spend some $300 billion. How much is this? Very big amounts on subsidies in the mid-2000s. Among them, $250 billion of which was spent by 21 developed nations. Even developed nations is giving big subsidies. The most famous one is agriculture. EU is very much keen to protect their agriculture. EU spent $55 billion year 2000, and also US Farm Bill contained $186 billion for the coming 10 years after 2007. Well, the lobbyists from agriculture in the United States is a very strong lobby, because if they lose these agricultural sector people's support, then political power of the Republicans or Democrats, they lose their votes. So therefore, they are concerning about how much support they will get from agriculture sector. So therefore, one time I got some information. American agriculture industry is enjoying getting U.S. federal government's subsidies, 40% of their costs. So therefore, American fields, American corns, agricultural goods is cheaper than Japanese goods, agricultural goods. So therefore, they can export. But 40% is subsidized by the United States government. Well, because this is a political pressure. And also, other American strongest industry is the aeronautics, airplane companies, Boeing and Airbus. These companies are also enjoying various forms of the government subsidies. Special rate of the interest rates, or special subsidies for R&D development. So therefore, American airplane companies, because that is related to the American defense military industries also. So therefore, subsidies are quite political, right? And then other things is import quota, to protect a direct restriction on the quantity of some goods that may be imported, usually enforced by issuing import licenses. Certain products government insists to let the exporters get import licenses. Most of the developing countries is doing this. The other thing, sometimes lower tariff rate is applied to imports within the quota. Certain quotas, then okay, tariff rate is cheaper. But beyond that tariff quotas, then suddenly the tariff rate goes up, known as tariff rate quota. Okay, this is the import quotas. Now, today's lecture's final points I have to mention is the voluntary export restrictions. This is rather very much complicated ones. A quota on trade imposed by the exporting country, typically at the request of the importing country's government. The famous one will be the Japanese automobile export to the United States. Okay, in 1981, we agreed Japanese will restrict our export to the United States not beyond the 1.68 million vehicles per year. Okay. So what is the implication of this? We have to discuss very carefully. The extra profit that producers make when supply is artificially limited by an import quota is referred to as quota rent. Who gets benefit? Well, American Automobile Company, GM, Ford, Chrysler, they may get benefits. But they will charge heavy, American consumer have to pay more money, expensive, Okay, if Japanese government cars are self-restraining, but many people wants to buy Japanese automobiles. So therefore, even though they pay more money for Japanese cars, so American peoples are paying much higher price than before the voluntary export restraints was enforced. They are gradually pay more money to the Japanese company. So US consumers have to pay about additional $1 billion a year between 81 to 85 due to the voluntary export restraints for Japanese automobiles. These extra 1 billion went to the Japanese producers. Well, who suffers? American consumers. Well, American automobile company, GMs or Fords, they made certain profits, but if they are enjoying too much these protections, then eventually they lose competitive power. So what happens in a GM now in the United States? Well, that is going on. So anyway, trade restriction is, in a sense, is not so good, but the government is, because of the political reasons, they have to do it. So today I will stop it here. So next session we'll discuss further. Thank you very much.